And welcome everyone to another episode of the Spoiler Room. We put Deaduary behind us and we are starting off Manic March. Yes, it's Movie Man's Manic March. Oh, I've got a lineup of films for you, and we are kicking it off with something just a little different. And Ian Simmons is with me today, so he didn't go running away screaming, as we're going to talk about 1990s The Invisible Maniac. How you doing, Ian?
I'm confused because I thought you said we were going to talk about a film tonight. God damn.
It's not often. It's not. I'm a horrible person. I'm going to put that out now. I'm a horrible person because when I have one of my wonderful patient crew members watch a movie that I've picked for a show that they said they're going to be on, and they do still come on, and I really appreciate it. But when they text me, what the hell is this movie? I know I've picked a winner.
Yeah, I was not prepared. I was literally not prepared because I got up ass early this morning, as I always do.
Sure.
And I thought I was ahead of the game
Uh-huh.
because I finished watching the movie for this week, Maniac Cop, yesterday. And I saw that you posted a private message to me along with a link to this StreamYard.
Yeah.
And you said something like, if you're still talking to me, or here's the link for tonight, if you're still talking to me after this movie. And I thought to myself, why would he think that I wouldn't want to talk to him after watching Maniac Cop? And then I went and I checked the schedule. I was like, oh shit, that's not this week. What is this? The Invisible Maniac? So I looked it up. It's on YouTube, which is far, far larger a platform than it deserves. And I was able to watch it in time for the show. And thank you.
Actually, I rented it for 99 cents on Amazon. So there you go.
Own it now.
No, I just rented. I didn't pay the $3 to own it. Only $1 to rent it.
Wait, it's really $3 to own it?
Yeah, it's $3 to own it.
I might have to pull the trigger.
Yeah, it's $3 to.
That's the quality on it, because the one on YouTube was literally from a VHS. You see the FBI warning come up.
Well, in all honesty, I don't think the Amazon rip is that much better. There's literally a slight tracking error in the video about 2/3 of the way through. Just a brief few frames, but I'm like, this literally is a transfer from the VHS. Way to go, Amazon. So those few folks out there who may not know we're talking Oscar season here, folks. So of course we're going to talk The Invisible Maniac, one that was ignored by a lot of awards shows and distributors and people that watch films.
Again, I probably said this before, but this reminds me, it's one of those movies that reminds me of a Beanie and Cecil line from the old cartoon show. It's a movie so bad it couldn't have been released. It had to have escaped.
No, it was released. It's put out by Adam Rifkin, who's actually put out some.
Adam Rifkin, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes, it's Adam Rifkin. He directed this under.
Wait. As Riff Coogan?
Yeah, Riff Coogan is how he's done his crazy films, because he also did Psycho Cop Returns, and he did a number of episodes of Bone Chillers, and yeah,
he did that. He did Chillerama, and then there's a Penn and Teller movie. I can't remember the name of it, but that's where I actually met him at the premiere. Wow.
Yes,
this makes so much more sense.
This is him. He here's the personal quote, which is what you'll appreciate. He goes, "An Adam Rifkin movie is really a movie that I think of as a career movie. Riff Coogan movies are more fun in my own personal edification and for practice." So he makes them under, because this was his third film. He just did them under Riff Coogan just to do something different, and
it's his Richard Bachman books.
It's his Richard Bachman books. Though I don't remember this much nudity in the Richard Bachman movies or films or books. Well, I
And
don't read books, so
honestly,
films.
I am kind of disappointed. I'm kind of disappointed that is an Adam Rifkin movie because I never pictured him as being that big of a dirtbag. Like, oh my God. And this is me saying this. I was uncomfortable with the luridness of with which this movie progressed.
Oh, this film is so lecherous. And in that note, since you're here, sir, you can give the synopsis of the Invisible Maniac.
Or as I like to call it, the Invisible Me Too-niac.
Oh,
This
nice.
is about well, first of all, there's someone in this movie. This has to be a stage name, considering our Riff Coogan revelation from a minute ago. There's someone in the opening credits who's credited as being named Clement Von Frankenstein.
Yes, Clement von Frankenstein.
Yeah, spelled a little different than Frankenstein.
Clement George Freiherr von und zu Frankenstein,
aka Adam Rifkin.
yeah, that's his name. The way it's spelled, that's his legit name.
Well,
he was in a Lionheart with Van Damme. So
sweet Lord, that's his actual name, huh?
That's his actual name.
Wow. God bless Adam Rifkin for giving one home. All right, so there's this. Start with a flashback. There's a psychologist talking to a creepy mom about her kid, and he's gonna grow up to do horrible things. And excuse me, we see him in the opening credits doing horrible things. Well, he's watching a neighbor girl undress very, 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 very slowly through his telescope. We see him, he's wearing short shorts and like a necktie. He's old classic nerd, got the big glasses. Mom comes in, sees being a peeping Tom, berates him. Flash forward 20 years. He is okay. So
there's a lot of flash forwards.
Well, the actor who plays this guy looks like he's 45 years old, but we're supposed to believe that he's 25.
Yeah.
And when I say totally 45, it's a rough 45. He looks like Mark Singer lost a bet on Halloween night at the costume shop and was forced to drunkenly hang out like a beaten up nerd.
Wow.
But so he's presenting his great discovery to a league of world-renowned scientists.
Yeah.
including a black doctor with a thick Southern accent who says, "I came all the way from Belgium for this nonsense." Like, huh? That's where we are, folks.
No one said, maybe he was born in Texas and in the South, and then he moved to Belgium for his degree, and then he came back as part of the world-renowned scientist league to see what our hero or anti-hero was coming up with.
That is definitely an out that Mr. Coogan thought of. He's like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. No one's gonna think that hard.
But so all of this, this doctor has a big Carrie moment because everybody laughs at him when he's unable. He injects himself with this serum that's supposed to disrupt molecules and essentially turn himself invisible. And as one of the doctors says when they're pointing and laughing, "You want to see invisible? Watch us all leave." The only thing invisible is your brain, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
So he goes insane. He starts like beating up and attacking and murdering the scientists as they race out of the room. He gets committed to a sanitarium, and 6 months later, he escapes, running through a field pursued by dogs. He throws them off the set and then does like a victory dance. And then he shows up later at an unassuming high school as the substitute teacher for the Dr. Franks, I think, or something like that.
What, his name? Kevin Smith.
No, the guy he replaced. The teacher.
Yeah. The teacher
Mr. Franks, I think he choked to death on a barbecue beef sandwich.
Yes.
But yes, his alias is Mr. Kevin Smith.
I could not get
5 years
past
before
that.
Clerks, no one knew who Kevin Smith was, so it's a
No,
complete coincidence.
yeah, but I just couldn't get past it every time they said
There's a lot I couldn't get past in this movie, Mark. So, um, this thing makes Birdemic look like Wings of Desire. So he's a high school teacher now with a bunch of horny, like bad attitude students. He resumes his experiments with a bunny. Coincidentally, one of his students is named Bunny, and he perfects the formula to turn himself invisible. And apparently, according to his rantings and ravings, when he becomes invisible, he is also made to be, more unhinged and far hornier. So he uses this newfound gift to creep on high school girls in the shower or in the locker room and sneak into one of their rooms while she's sleeping and pull the covers and the nightie off so we can all see everything. He goes more and more crazy and starts murdering people, cackling, kind of like, remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
yeah.
Christopher Lloyd's judge character, when he revealed, he's like, and he talked just like this.
Yes!
Yeah. And he just does that cackle and he starts like throwing out these crazy, Freddy Krueger reject one-liners. And then he fights and he gets away, maybe, or maybe he gets killed, but he gets away. And then there's that ending, which you warned me about, and I was not prepared.
the climactic ending between the teacher and the
someone was climaxing. No, I'm talking about the very, very end.
Oh, the very, very end. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The more and more I watch movies from this era, the more and more I think, you know what, ladies, I think you've got some genuine complaints. The lecherousness, the harassment, the misogyny is not overplayed. In fact, it may be vastly understated, because I could maybe recommended this movie to people, 5-10 years ago, but not now, because they'd probably have me locked up. And it's also like really distasteful.
It was at this point that Ian was regretting ever being on the spoiler room. No. No, it's interesting. If there's one genre of film that really hasn't aged well, is the sex comedy, or the comedy with like the Porkies and but those are better written. So I think it's, but then you had these levels that were kind of playing off of that success, and this was made in 1990, though 90 is only a year away from the 80s. So you can still say that mentality was still in there for B exploitation films. And that's what exactly this is. This is a direct to video exploitation film that stars a few porn stars. Savannah was one of them. She plays Vicky at the time, trying to kind of do a straight film. And or you have a woman who was in a lot of horror films, Melissa Moore, who we saw in was it Samurai Cop 2. She was actually in Samurai Cop 2 Deadly Vengeance. But she was been in a lot of horror films and B exploitation films like Vice Academy Part 2 and Sorority House Massacre 2. Good old Scotty D is probably fairly familiar with her filmography. He has a very diverse taste, but he is well renowned with the work of some of these folks that are in this film. But I mean, it's full on exploitation. I was trying to avoid picking horror films the whole year, because even though the horror of 1988 is our theme, I was like, we won't do a theme around the films. It's not all going to be horror. So I picked this one figuring, kind of silly comedy. And then I forgot that it did have the horror elements in it, which show up in the third act of this film. If you can break it out into acts, which I don't think you can really. It's just
Well, I think there's definitely there's a definite starting point of the third act, and that's when he commits the first murder with the submarine sandwich.
Eat it all. Eat it all. Shoves the submarine sandwich all down the gentleman's mouth, and his throat gets all big.
Yeah, his throat becomes like 7 times bigger than the actual sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's again, it felt like an homage to Friday the 13th, but when was it Chet or Biff or whatever the hell his name is?
Chet. There was Chet, yeah.
Yeah, Chet and Bunny go into the principal's office to have sex. The dead principal is just behind the desk, and we keep cutting back to where, kind of like we did with Ned in the Kevin Bacon scene in the first Friday the 13th. Although this is one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen in any film. It's in the middle of the horror, like stalk and slash creative death portion of the film, and they stop to have a legitimate love scene. It's not that they're just sneaking into the principal's office to have sex. That's what you think they're doing. But then, like, the sexy music starts playing, and
sexy sax.
Yeah, I wrote down the lyrics to this. The melody of the nightingale is you.
Yeah,
that's what's playing during this tender lovemaking scene. And they keep cutting back to dead principal with blood running down her neck and the dagger sticking out of her chest.
Yeah, this film, I mean, it's wafer thin. It's like, intent. Someone had an idea and they said, yeah, let's shoot it. Fuck it. And they got a bunch of people who were willing to take their clothes off in front of the camera. And yeah, you get Noel Peters, who is acting. He is playing a character in here. We hope he's playing a character. And you're right. He does take the progression kind of like the Invisible Man, as we've seen, or the Hollow Man when we reviewed it. I
was having severe Hollow Man flashbacks.
Me too.
to the point. I mean, not like structure or anything, but just the ugliness of what would someone potentially do if they had this power? Well, yeah, I'd use it to perv on chicks and kill people.
Yeah,
okay, sure.
Seems to be a running theme with the Invisible Man story. I mean, we all the way back to like Claude Rains, who played the original, or
Lee Whannell's version from a couple years ago. Excellent movie.
Or Lee Whannell. Yeah, it always seems to boil down to when the characters get that invisible power. They resort to sex and violence because they can get away with it, and that's even in here in this B movie exploitation film. You still get that running theme that they've captured with previous invisible person stories, is that it affects their psyche. It ends up making them go crazy because of the power of not being seen and basically no accountability. It's an exploration into the no accountability. And you get that here. Yes, I know I'm making a lake out of a puddle, but you do with his character first with the sex, but then with the killing, with it, you get that. And in fact, it's interesting because they show two sides of him. They show him when he gets nervous because these kids are fucking with the teacher. Obviously, it's summer school. They really don't want to be here. This guy's a dweeb. He's he's a physics teacher of all things. And while he's promoting and actually pushing the idea of matter, energy, motion, and force for the core of physics, everybody else is trying to plot a way to where they can startle him or mess with him, like Vicky, who does the old inappropriate student teacher thing, going, I'll do anything for an A, and he freezes up.
Well, the thing that blew my mind is that this wasn't even like after an hour after school where he's like cleaning the chalkboard or something. This is literally like during passing period. We're meant to believe that the bell rings and that's when everybody shows up to class. No one ever enters a class until the bell actually rings. Then everybody shows up. I kept thinking during that scene of, in
Mhm.
particular, it reminded me of the movie Slaughter High, because they're talking
Yep.
about like, oh, we're gonna set up this nerd and get
Mhm.
revenge on him, and I thought, oh, that's when something's gonna happen to turn him invisible, and it doesn't exactly pan out this way. But yeah, this movie is so many other different movies,
It
not
is.
necessarily, but it reminds me, it's unique because it reminds me of other skeevy movies that I never want to watch again.
It does, but some of the characters are also just those generic tropish high school kids we saw in every other 80s high school kid movie, which I think they were kind of going for the parody for with it. I mean, the jocks are picking on the nerds. You have the one girl who is played by Deborah Lamb, the one kind of nerdy girl who actually, she's
She
and then
fire hose.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
she's the fire hose death. She's the one that has legitimate feelings for the one innocent guy, innocent in quotes, but of the 3 or 4 guys in this group, he's probably the most innocent because he doesn't really get with women, though he talks about it. He's the nice guy in quotes. So you have them, you've got, the popular couple, the horny couple. It's just, every one of them is a trope from like an 80s high school movie. And I think that's what they were kind of going for, is, and maybe I'm giving them more credit than I is, but they seem to embody. And you even get the weird, you get the weird, uh, janitor, the unusual janitor,
Henry.
Henry. Now, what's funny about Henry is he's a side character, right? Through a lot of this film, he's the one that takes a lot of the brunt of the folks, picking on and bullying, even more so than the substitute. They pick on him because he talks funny, he looks weird. It's the old, the pretty kids are picking on the ugly guy. So you think it's a side character, though. You're like, okay, or maybe he's going to play into this later and save someone. But you don't hardly see him for like the first 45 minutes of this film. And then we follow him home after he gets caught, peeping through the grates because the way they designed this gym in the high school is there's a grate that goes right to the ladies' shower from the basketball court. Like,
Well, what's amazing is that you can peep through this grate, and you're right. The ventilation must have been amazing in that shower because no steam is coming out of that
no,
vent.
there's no absolute steam, which, that shows you how old I am. This is how old I am. I'm watching a film, okay, and you would think that it would play to some male thing, but all I'm thinking about is there's no steam. That water's got to be cold. I feel horrible for these actresses who have to be in this shower scene, be all giggly and that, and that water's got to be cold. That's what's running through my mind, and that's how I'm old, because I'm just.
How I know I'm old is that I'm watching these naked girls in the shower for these extended sequences, thinking like they're in high school. Like this is I'm much, it's kind of like it was cool if you were like 11 years old back in 1988, as I was, to have a crush on Danielle Harris when she shows up in Halloween 4. It's not cool to be 45 years old and watching Halloween 4 and say, "Man, that Danielle Harris, huh?"
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, even though it's 1990, it's still the same trope of you have 20 somethings playing high schoolers, but it's
or,
the
or
fact,
30 somethings in the
or
case of some of those guys.
30
Jesus
something.
Christ.
The guys especially are older, so I mean, there is that. So it's not like the 70s where they're actually, unfortunately, possibly using an underage actress for a more scandalous scene. But at the same time, in the context of the film, they're supposed to be seniors in high school, and you're just like, this is just not. No, this is.
Well, I did appreciate Mr. Coogan slash whatever the hell his name
Adam
is.
Rifkin's, yeah.
Rifkin, yes. He's trying to be like progressive and fair about things, because as much as the substitute teacher is nervous around these girls, or like, coming on to him and stuff, but then he uses his invisible powers to like harass, and of course
Right.
he's got it. We have to see what every girl in this movie looks like without their top on. That's a prerequisite, especially if they're about to get horribly murdered. But he turns the tables out of nowhere to say that the kind of comely, sexy principal, who's a lady, she starts sexually harassing, like seducing Chet, the high school boy.
She-
She's like, "Come into the office and kiss my breasts." I'm like, what is going on here? I thought this was a fantasy sequence. Like, this was like what the teacher, what
No.
Mr. Smith was thinking about or something. But no, like, this is just happening.
Yeah.
And then a few scenes later, she's bringing Mr. Smith in, saying, "I've always found you attractive." I'm like, you need to get your eyes checked, lady. What's going on?
Played by Stephanie Blake, the principal was playing her. She was one of the singing nurses in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Really?
Yeah. She also she had a number of other minor roles, it looks like, throughout. But yeah, she's an old. She is not of high school age. She is a more mature woman, and sure, she is now, like you said, seducing the high school boys, which you're just like, wait, what?
It like never comes up again, really. You think,
No.
oh, the bunny's gonna find out, or there's gonna be like a whole like weird love triangle or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that probably would have been a more interesting movie than what we got.
Yeah, the guy doesn't see. It's just this random scene. She just asks him into the office, and he's supposed to be, he's got this English results that could keep him from getting college. He's the football jock, but she says maybe we could do a little quid pro quo.
With all this screwing and swapping that goes on in this movie, those are the last test results he needs to be concerned about.
Right. But so this film, and where I was going with the crazy, the janitor is this film is 126 minutes long, folks. About
an hour and 26 minutes.
An hour, excuse me. This hour and 20. My apologies.
Sometimes it felt like 120.
Sorry, an hour and 26 minutes. Okay, so it's an hour and 26 minutes. We get this minor character who you think is just going to be the subject of bullying, but may show up later and be the hero at the end. But instead, we follow him home after being bullied enough and being caught by the principal and such for peeping. And we get a fairly extended dream sequence involving him and some punk rock women and vampires, and almost like this music video, but they couldn't get the rights to the actual song that they wanted, so they end up using this other music for this whole dream sequence where this kind of pervy janitor gets his comeuppance in it at least a couple different times at the hands of a bunch of topless vampires and punk rock vampires. And it's an extended scene. This thing goes on for like 5 minutes.
Is this the thing where they're like rotating the girls walking down the hall, and then they cut to them in the bathtub in the shower?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it started out as a fantasy sequence of him imagining the women that we've seen, the cast, walking down in kind of a arms linked in, video vixen type garb. Let's put it that way. It would be probably the best way to put it of the late 80s if you watched any of like, White Snake and all the hair rock type music videos. So they're kind of dressed like that, and they're walking down like very powerful down the hallway. And then occasionally you get these glimpses of them nude or partially nude or whatever down these rooms as they're marching. And so it's this kind of fantasy, and it's his because when he came into his bedroom, he had like pages from like Penthouse and had plastered all over his room. So this guy's a perv, and he's dreaming this perv dream sequence. And then while they're marching, all of a sudden this punk rock vampire topless girl shows up, and then she bites him. And then we cut to this courtyard scene where there's a other topless women and some of the cast girls that we saw earlier, women, they're there now topless and dancing, and there's mute. It's just out of the blue, this just random extended sequence. Did it surprise you, Ian, just how long this sequence actually went?
No,
No.
because there's just so much stuff in here that is way too long, like where he's doing his experiments on the rabbit, and I swear to God, like making his lesson plans. Like this thing is just all over the place. Uh, and even the shower scenes were. This, this is the talent that it takes to make this a movie this messed up. The shower scenes, I was annoyed with them instead of like fully engaged. But it's this whole like misogynist male fantasy. And I couldn't figure out if this was our Kevin Smith's idea of what's going on in that shower, or if it's the director or what. But they're having a lot of fun in the shower. They're having so much fun that if you listen to it, it sounds like they're at a damn football game. They're like, wow, yeah, wow. Like,
they're elbowing each other, and they're
but just that's the physical language. If you listen to the audio, it sounds like they're at a pep rally. They're screaming, and I'm like, no one is that enthusiastic. Now, I've not spent any amount of time in women's showers, but I would feel like if there was that much noise going on, it would be heard echoing throughout the gym, and someone would be coming to say, what's going on in there?
Yeah, it was, and it's one of those things where it's got all these skeevy and exploitation elements, and it made me wonder while watching it. I was like, it's trying to, I think, to be a parody and maybe make a statement of the ridiculousness of those films, maybe, but that's probably giving it too much credit.
I would say so, because there's nothing to differentiate it from those other movies except to say that it goes further in exploitation than than your typical slasher. I mean, this film is, for the most part, it's a straight up porno movie, minus like penetration scenes and adding some violence.
This is a film. If you ever hear someone refer to Cinemax as Skinemax, this is a film that would play at 11 o'clock Saturday night on Cinemax. I will not say how I know why, but when I was younger, my dad had Cinemax, and let's just say while channel surfing, if you ran across the Cinemax channel after 11 o'clock on Saturday night, you would find a movie like this.
Or so you've read.
Or so I've read. I've heard.
On Wikipedia.
That's right. Wikipedia. If there isn't one, now there is. Way to go. That's
Don't Google it.
Don't Google that. Safe search. Safe search. And like I said, I'd like to think that they were trying to do an attempt of maybe poking fun at it, but it is kind of giving it that credit. This is truly that direct-to-video type of exploitation fodder that plays up to every trope and cliche that you've heard people talk about late 80s or early 90s exploitation films. I mean, this checks off so many boxes in that, from the randomness to the acting. there are some surprises in here. As you mentioned, there is the surprise of having the principal actually be just as oversexed as our Kevin Smith. No offense to the real Kevin Smith, to our crazy guy, so she's just as oversexed as him, which is kind of surprising. What is also surprising is there's an opportunity for a shitty dummy moment, and we don't actually get a shitty dummy moment for a film of this budget and of this nature. Our crazy invisible man chases one of the jock boys up to the roof of the school, and he's fighting him, but of course the guy's losing because he's invisible. And at one point, eventually, at the climax of the fight, he gets tossed off the roof of the school and lands on top of a car. And I thought for sure the minute he ran towards the edge, I'm like, we're going to get a shitty dummy. We're going to get a shitty dummy.
I thought the same thing.
And we don't. We get a stunt guy jumping off of a 3-story school and then the actor landing on top of a car. I mean, it's cut so you don't see it, but still, it's like that's a real person. They actually had a real stunt guy in this exploitation horror comedy film jump off of a 3-story building. I'm like, wow, that kind of surprised me just a little bit.
Maybe he saw the dailies and realized what this is going to do for his career, so he just went for it. Like, I'll save the stunt double. But no, you're absolutely right. I was in the same position, like, oh, here we go, and no, it's just. But I was impressed. I was also impressed with the scene where the two girls get they discover the nerd chick with strangled by the fire hose.
Right, Deborah Lamb's character is killed. Yeah,
right, and they proceed to run very clumsily, hand in hand, throughout the school and up the stairs, and they come to a classroom. And the teacher locks the doors and starts like throwing books at them because he's invisible and everything. But he drowns the one girl in a fish tank.
Yeah.
By getting, and this is what, again, I can't get in anyone's head, but there's just something so, I'm going to say it again, misogynistic about the treatment of this character. Like, she's topless, her arm is twisted behind her back, and her head is being like forcefully lowered as she's making her way over to the fish tank. It's almost like this weird police hold or something. And then she's forced to go down into the fish tank where he drowns her. But after she's dead, I think it's after she's dead, the surviving girl looks over to the fish tank, and you can see the Invisible Man reach his hand into the water and like splash it around. And it looked like a CGI effect that we would have seen in Paul Verhoeven's Invisible Man movie, Hollow Man, like we talked about. I'm like, what is that effect doing in this movie? That looks really good.
Right. And maybe it is Adam Rifkin, as he mentioned, making a film like this where he's practicing certain things, or trying out different techniques and stuff on a film that really doesn't matter. He puts his, alias on there or whatever, and he just makes a film that he's just making because he was able to, and makes some money shooting this thing. Where he's not truly 100% invested in it, but gets to try out things like an actual stunt guy jumping off, shooting an actual stunt guy jumping off of a roof, or like you said, the invisible hand, and that with the drowning victim, or even with Betty, Deborah Lamb's character, getting choked by the fire hose. It was interesting the way they did that. They kind of did actually a reverse. They did. If you've seen enough films, you can notice when they do like a reverse frame, like they shot it this way and then they reversed it to make it look like it wrapped around her neck, even though it actually went the other way. But it was still played well. I mean, unfortunately, in that scene, the Invisible Maniac felt the need to rip off her shirt first before he choked her with the fire hose, which, again, more misogyny. You can read into that what you would, the fire hose choking her. But but it was an effect, and it was an interesting camera technique that he used to get that across as this guy being invisible, because they're working on a limited budget. So how do you do invisible effects?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, I guess I can appreciate that aspect of it, because they talk about invisibility a lot, but he doesn't really become invisible. I mean, there's the effect with the rabbit. And I get, like there's a flash of blue light, and then he, disappears. Oh yeah,
I got my invisible rabbit right here. So
wow, you finally perfected that serum, huh?
There you go. Yeah.
These won't be able to see the pellets, but
until you step on them, and
but but they don't really get into that whole invisibility stuff until the third act of the movie, and a lot of it is accomplished through camera work. Like, the craziest shit I think I've seen in a long time was, well, the second craziest. The first craziest is the showdown in the gym where Kevin Smith, he runs out of his serum, so he's visible now. He's squaring off against Chet and Bunny.
Yeah.
So stupid. He boxes the hell out of Chet. Chet goes down for the count. And then he runs at Bunny and jumps up in the air, and there's like cartoon, like you see his feet coming at the camera, and he lands off screen, but he squash stomps Bunny We
He
never see
totally
her body, but he as he walks away out of the gym, it's like he was in a mud field except of blood and tissue and stuff. Like, what the hell kind of boots is he wearing?
he curb stomped her like I've not seen any. I mean, he jumps in the air and just lands on her head, and then uh, I understand head wounds and such can be very messy, but he really like I don't know if he stepped in the guts too or what, but yeah, he's got it caked on his shoes in that as he walks away. And yeah, there's the squished moments. He's leaving footprints as well along the way, and you're just like, what?
But that's still only the second craziest thing because the big one is the actual climax where Kevin Smith is back at his apartment. He's gotten away with it all, and then Chet comes in with a shotgun, holding it very awkwardly.
He never held a gun before.
It's not like this that he's going to use it. It's like he's holding out almost like an action figure. I can't get in front of the camera right, but it's very strange. And then they start to tussle, and then Chet gets a hold of the serum, and he takes the invisibility formula. So now they're both invisible, and they're having this epic fight, and you know it because the camera is just like wishing around, like looking at different parts of the room as someone like off screen, I'm sure, is like kicking
pulling a
pillowcases
string
or whatever. Yeah.
They're pulling a string on the lamp, and they're throwing stuff. Yeah.
And you can hear them fighting and stuff, but you can't see anything, which is exactly the point until this is where the shitty dummy comes in. Because Chet gets... Help me out with this, Mark. I understand that when you're invisible, that means you can see everything, but no one can see you.
Right.
When Chet takes the invisibility serum, it's as if he gains the ability to see Kevin Smith, which makes no sense.
Don't you know that's how it always works? If you're invisible and someone else is invisible, you can now see the invisible person now because you're also invisible. So your molecules have the same refractory light capability as the molecules of the invisible person refracting that light, and therefore you actually see each other, though you may not see a lot of the environment around you because your perspective is skewed, because if you carry the 5 and go to the subpower of 3 for the speed of light, you'll see that the refractory capabilities of the new molecules of your body may prevent you from seeing some of the outside world. But since your molecules are on the same quantum level, carry the 4, as the other invisible person, you can roll the dice. Hey, a 7. See each other. So
far be it from me to question science like that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Hey, we've got Robert Infobaum with us, and he says he gathered it isn't invisible killer bunnies. That would have been great in Summer School 1987, and the title would have made for a good horrid film. It would have, yes.
This reminded me of Summer School as well, partially because it takes place in summer school, but the whole time, like, why can't I be watching Summer School right now?
That's a fun movie that doesn't get talked about nearly as enough. Mark Harmon was fun. That's just a fun film. That one, it gets lost amongst the other teenage movies.
Well, I think it was last week. It was either Shout Factory or Kino.
I think Shout
Factory came out of this special edition of it. So you can.
Yeah, I have to check that out because I watched that film many times.
Oh, that was my jam in 1986. I loved that movie.
Summer School was definitely it just got buried amongst the other high school stories, but it's a fun one. That was
with a killer Oingo Boingo opening score
song.
Happy.
Yeah. So this has a killer, not Oingo Boingo. There's Boingo Boingos going on, but not Oingo Boingo. But you were mentioning this climactic fight that we get. I will say again, this has got to be where Rifkin is just trying out different things, because it's like invisible fighting, including your clothes, and the gun is invisible. So they're fighting.
And I forgot the gun turned invisible.
The gun turned invisible too. And they're fighting. And then all of a sudden you hear this bang. And the minute you hear the bang, the body shows up with the head and boom. I mean, it's actually a great cut it's one of those things where you're watching this going, okay, this is kind of silly, and all of a sudden there's this bang, and the way it's just handled, I'm like, actually, that was pretty good. I
Yeah.
was like, that was actually a good effect that they did, and how it played into the story to where everybody thinks that is, Kevin Smith, aka our crazy doctor, who blew his own head off. Kevin Dornwinkle was his name. And I kind of liked how it actually, and I'm like, okay, that kind of ends like your more kind of goofy horror film. I'm like, that's interesting. It's just you've got all these other uncomfortable exploitation parts that really don't age well, and it's hard to really say whether or not they were just trying to do it for laughs and parody, or if they were just doing it because that's the type of film they wanted to make, is this exploitation film, and they found a bunch of folks who are willing to shed clothing because limited budget, so your wardrobe very limited.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that gag kind of reminds me of Alien Covenant with the David
Oh yeah.
android. At the very
Mm-hmm.
end, they do the switcheroo, so you think that the bad one got killed, and it was the bad one who survived. Um, yeah, it's. I even like the idea, kind of the news anchor, like at the end,
Oh
kind
yeah.
of a prank. But then again, it's like we can't just have any actress in this film who just doesn't show the goods.
Yeah, everybody had to all if you were a female cast member at some point, you ended up losing your clothing in some way, shape, or form, unfortunately. I mean, and if you're going to do that, then rip the clothes off the guys too. Just do your equal opportunity nudity, for crying out loud. you
Well,
know
it's tough because I don't even necessarily think you need to do that, but just don't make it so.
Blatant.
It's not even blatant. I'm gonna use a word that I hate, but rapey. There is
Yeah.
this element of like sexual assault
Yeah.
whenever it's not like fun, like, oh, the
Mm-mm.
clothes flew off or something. It's like something you'd see in the inciting incident in Death Wish.
Mm-hmm.
That gang busts into the
Yeah.
apartment and assaults the women. Like this movie is a sister
Yeah.
or brother or relative of that kind of portrayal. And it's not fun. It's literal exploitation. It's not like when we think of exploitation movies, think kind of like, oh, kind of fun, grungy, retro things. No, this is exploitation of people. And I just kept wondering, how game were these actresses to be in this movie? I mean, I know some of them were from, the adult industry and everything, but was
Uh,
everybody, and were they all, or were they thinking, I'll do what I'm told. Maybe this will get me
it's
somewhere.
paycheck. They're looking to get a movie possibly on their resume. Hard to say. Looking for legit work, and especially in in the 80s, even into the 90s, even though everybody thinks about the 90s being whatever, there were still plenty of these types of films, and you know. Sometimes that was the only way actresses, even though they were very talented, could get in any work, is if they were willing to shed clothing.
Mhm.
And again, it could just be the resume thing too. It's what they were comfortable with. It's just one of those weird films like that, to where you watch it now and you're just really like, and the thing is, it doesn't really, if you look at it like you said, in the context of the story, okay, even they've got the kind of goofy music, they've got the kind of, you know uh, goofy deaths, well, not goofy, but the creative deaths, whatever, slasher type deaths. But if you think about his character, and I know you're not supposed to give it deep thought, I'm like, this guy's going psychotic, he's had a psychotic break and he's killing folks, and before he kills them, he has to expose them in some way, shape, or form. He has to humiliate them, basically, in some way, shape, expose them. And you're just like, "Okay, that just makes this guy even that more disturbing, and that's not funny. That's straight up disturbing." And I'm old now, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, I understand that's not, it's trying to be played off as ha ha, but it really isn't. It's this, everybody looking through the grate at the girls in the shower. You're just like,
Well, because you mentioned Porky's earlier. There's a similar scene in Porky's where the guys find the kind of hole in the bathroom and they're watching all the girls take the showers. But also to something that you were saying, like if you're gonna give to the girls, give to the guys as well. I don't know if you remember how that Porky scene ended,
oh yeah,
but the
he gets,
one guy
yeah.
stuck his thing through the hole because he thought the girls were all into it, and they disappear, and Miss Ballbricker comes and really rips it right
Rips it
off.
off. Yeah.
So it's commentary along with comedy, along with risque nudity, as opposed to this, which is just voyeurism.
Now, granted, we're just old white guys, but I will say, I think the other thing with the perspective of the Porkies is that the women become aware fairly quickly they're being watched
Mm-hmm.
as well, and they kind of find it funny, and they're not threatened by it at all. If you look at that scene in Porky's, they realize they're being watched, and so it takes away at least a little bit that their awareness, whereas the women in the Invisible Maniac, as far as we know, aren't aware they're being watched. They aren't aware that this grate is there that can be seen by them, and maybe they don't care, but it's never played in the story.
Well, it's also that and I guess it's just movies, but considering where that grate is, it's on the floor basically, and you have to
Yeah.
look through it. And when we see through it, we can see that the shower is very far away down that room.
Yeah, it's a
But
big
that's
shower room.
right, but that's not the view that we get. We see what the guys see, but then we
Right.
also go in for the nice juicy close-ups of everything. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is a different kind of, this is not story based. This is for,
It's literally just for the titillation, for lack of a better term, of that scene. It's not even kind of played, ha parody at all. It's just there, and I understand that's the type of film it is, but at the same time, I'm sitting here looking at it going, you could make some different choices, and this film actually would be kind of a fun zany B film if you would have made some different choices, but they went the, lack of a better term, the easy route. the easy route, because they were just making something. Maybe they just needed something for a release. This is, I think, Ye Old Republic direct to video release film. So,
they were going for a release, all right. Those
yeah,
shower scenes.
yeah, kind of. We got some comments from Mr. Infobon, who said that 1990 was also the year of Harrison Marked for Death, which we covered on the Spoiler Room many years ago, which I title a specific way and still has thousands of 1-second clicks as people are looking for the actual legitimate movie. And it was a year before City Slickers and Last Boy Scout. Yeah, the early 90s was a weird time. And he says, an adult actress in a legit film, of course, is comedy. It can be, depending on the actress. And a lit actor going to adult route is simply sad. Yeah, I guess I think it is sad if they feel that way. It just depends, I guess, more context of why they would have chosen that route, if it was by choice or by, necessity. I think, just saying that it can be sad, but at the same time, if they're choosing to, just because that's what they want to do, they're taking charge of life, and I'd like to do, okay, versus, some other situation that forces them into doing something more risque.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is behind it, but I can't watch A Christmas Story anymore the same way because Scott Schwartz, the kid who played Flick, ended up in adult movies later on.
Yeah,
which
well,
I haven't watched, but
and then Yield Saved by the Bell, Screech made his sex tape, so it's just, you won't look at it the same way again.
We were talking about legit actors, though. Not to speak ill of the dead, but
no. Now
hey,
he's got
you're talking. I have the T-shirt. I paid $50 or whatever to save Screech's house.
Okay, there you go. I was gonna say he has a reputation in Wisconsin, or had,
That's right. He got into like a bar fight or something.
Yeah,
towards
he
the end of
did.
his
Yeah,
life,
he got
right?
a
That
bar.
was pretty bad.
He unfortunately passed and had a rough life for quite some time, unfortunately. And then, Robert Baum says 2 words, Deborah Shelton. She did regain some legitimacy by returning to the New Dallas, and Tanya Roberts did go from adult direct to video releases to that 70s show.
That's right. Yeah.
She did. And Steve Jeffries from Fright Night did too. I mean, that's the thing is I think that's one interesting thing that we live nowadays more so in. And what do I know? I'm a fucking old white guy, so I couldn't tell you for sure, but it just seems like though that there seems to be a little bit of a less stigma for actresses who have done adult, who go into the legit realm, even though it's hard for them to, versus the way it was looked at possibly, years ago. Not saying it's improved too much, but I mean, if you look at someone like Sasha Grey,
I was just gonna say, working with Steven
Steve
Soderbergh and
Soderbergh in
Girlfriend
the
Experience.
Girlfriend Experience. Now, I didn't care for the Girlfriend Experience. So it's just not my type of film. I found it rather like, but
Go watch it again. It's slow cinema.
yes, I know it's slow cinema. And again, I was still, but her performance was still good in it. And there's other actresses as well who have successfully moved. I mean, let's face it, everybody loves Joe Bob Briggs. Mail Girl is an adult actress, but she's also done legitimate work. There are more, folks who have moved and transitioned from adult work or doing risque work or, soft core, whatnot, into mainstream. And it seems to be a lot more over the last, say, 20 years than it was back in the day, when in the world of when Tracy Lords was first still trying to do it. She was the big kind of one of the bigger names trying to get into legitimate acting after an adult career. So it is possible they have done it. You look at a film like this and you realize again that depending on the situation of why they got into the film, but most of the times it was they were looking someone needed work. And it's what you were comfortable with. It still is today what you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with it, don't take the part. I mean, I feel bad. That's why I could never be an actor, because I've looked at some casting calls, and this is no slight to films, because I know they're always looking for a specific person and for specific situations in their stories. But I just look at the description of what they're looking for in it, and I'm just like, God, this is so superficial, or so just. They must look this way and be this way and be legitimate and be off, open to be doing this. And I'm just like, wow, and just gives me another respect for actors who, take these roles with these descriptions like this, and again, what do I know for sure? But I just know that with this film, it did not age well at all. And I think we will definitely wrap it up. And it's it's your final thought on this, Ian, and I give my final thought here.
Well, I do want to mention there got 2 more info
Oh, yes, we
bombs,
do. Yes, we
which
do.
I didn't know this. I got
Which
some homework to do, but
Priscilla Barnes did do adult work before Three's Company, and was in a Bond filmed, a virtual cameo in License to Kill. And while it is different, Stallone debuted in a softcore film. That is true. A Party at Kitty's. And I forgot what it was called, Party at something in Kitties or something. So yeah, he was there's some male actors too who did softcore work or whatnot before they, I mean, Caligula,
Malcolm
Kitty and
McDowell.
Studs, not Mal, I think it was Malcolm McDowell in Caligula, who. Yeah, that film, for crying out loud. Yeah, Malcolm McDowell and Peter O'Toole were.
Which that's the perfect name for
But I mean, so we've been, and Helen Mirren was in Caligula. I mean, it's one of those things where we talk about these films and you think of some of these actors and actresses, and we talk about, but it is interesting to sometimes explore what the early work of big named actors and actresses were at the time. You always associate a little bit with these more B movie possibly level actors, but you know,
I just thought of something. Someone needs, if this is out there already, fine. But a story about a porn actor trying to go legit or something, but his stage name was Peter O. Tool.
Oh, jeez. Wow. Ed Puriful Bob said that, yeah, Kitty and Studs was retitled the Italian Stallone after Stallone's rise, and that he regards Caligula as one of the worst films ever made. Many people would probably share that with you, while others would say that it is a piece of cinematic art that is definitely has its own history behind it, which we will not be talking about tonight. We are going to wrap it up. Yes, The Invisible Maniac. I can't recommend it. It's not funny enough to give some of the things it does a pass, which sounds bad, but there are films like that where you can. For some people, if you can laugh enough, it's like, oh yeah, well yeah, they did that, but it was hilarious, but it's not like a real B horror film. It's there.
It inspires me to, and again, you'd have to have a very close-knit special group of friends to do this, but have a night where you get a whole bunch of liquor and a whole bunch of these really uncomfortable, past their expiration date of appropriateness movies. You call it cringe and binge. And you just watch movies like The Invisible Maniac and you drink until you black out.
You drink until you're blackout, and hopefully you may have forgotten it. Yeah, it's a goofy film. There's, like, as we mentioned, there's a number of moments. It really hasn't aged well. It is one of those films that just you watch it and it's uncomfortable to watch. It was for me, in all honesty, just because I was just like, again, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, that water's got to be cold. And, why did he rip off the shirt before he killed her? Why did he just kill it? It's.
Well, that's the thing. I wasn't uncomfortable watching it. I just thought how times and my perception of things has changed. It's a fascinating movie. I can recommend it like on a purely academic level. But and by the way, Robert, you're asking where can I find the film? Well, Mark went the legit route and rented it on Amazon for 99 cents, but you can own it for $3.
Yes.
I found it on YouTube. It's not that hard to find.
No.
I'm not advocating piracy or anything, but I'm just saying I didn't even think to look on Amazon because this isn't going to be on Amazon, but it's on Amazon.
No, you just go to IMDb and you look up the movie, and it'll give you the link of if you can actually find it somewhere. And usually Amazon has it. But that's how I found it. I was surprised actually that Amazon had it, So he said, yeah, but he thinks the opening jump on Lethal Weapon had a dummy or a moment or two. I think it did have a shitty dummy. And yeah, don't forget the shower scene at the end of Body Double. Yeah, the Body Double, that's a whole nother discussion in itself. That's actually an interesting film. And what I like about that ending in Body Double, to spoil a couple of films tonight, is it showed you what actually goes on with those shower scenes in that at the end, which was interesting in Body Double, to where they call cut or whatever, and suddenly there's like 5 people around, and you find out the water is cold, and it actually kind of pulls away the veil on that. So, Invisible Maniac, it is what it is. If you like your goofy sexploitation 80s comedy and you haven't seen it yet, then sure, go ahead. It just has not aged well. It's just one of those things where it's a product of the time. And just because it's 1990 doesn't mean it's any less elements than what a 1989 horror film had, or 1988 horror film had, which we are talking this month, folks. Yes, it is Maniac March, so look for a number of what I hope you'll find interesting films with the term Maniac in the title, though we will not be, as I said, talking about Maniac or the remake of Maniac. we'll save those for another time. I wanted to pick something a little different. So we've got
You
that.
succeeded by a country mile, Mark.
And
Wow.
I succeeded. I've actually seen this film before. So many years ago in the early 90s, I saw it. But
I was
it
wondering how the hell you even knew to pick this thing.
Oh yeah, no, I knew it. I knew of it. But yeah, so and Robert Infobomb said he reckons Dennis Frank looks like a low life of a filmmaker. Boogie Nights would have been great for him. That is true. Possibly would have been good for him, but yeah, we're gonna. Dennis, he meant Dennis France. Yeah, Dennis France. Yeah, I don't know. Dennis France is an interesting character too. So
I used to love him on NYPD Blue.
Yeah, it's just the whole camera thing from NYPD Blue. But again, that is for another time. But right now, we do get the license to shill for my good friend Ian Simmons here. Thank you so much, Ian, for muscling through this film tonight. It's a mixed bag for sure. And I don't know if anybody will come to any judgment outside of, it's one that it's exactly what you probably expect it to be. So license to shill is yours, Ian. Shill away, please, sir.
Well, thank you. My name's Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I also have a YouTube channel with which you go to youtube.com and look up Kicking the Seat, and I post reviews and interviews and live streams and all kind of stuff. And specific thing to plug, next Wednesday night, March 9th, I think. Yeah, 9th.
March 9th.
At 8:30 p.m. Central, I'll be hosting a live stream roundtable with Earth's Mightiest Critics, and hopefully Mark will be on that panel. We'll be talking about The Batman, Matt Reeves' latest film, which it seems everybody in the Chicagoland area who is a film critic has seen except for me. So I'll be paying to see it opening weekend like everybody else. But yeah, it should be a fun time. So come hang out. We'll be live, and you can join us in the chat, much like you can here. I'm also here on Tuesdays.
He is here on Tuesdays. He might still be here next week. We'll see after picking this film, especially after he watches the next film as well that I got. I got some doozies this month. This is going to test the mettle of our good friend Ian Simmons here, because metal.
Before I forget, I did, as I mentioned earlier, I did watch Maniac Cop instead of this movie initially. So I'm ahead for my homework, but I noticed that both of them had scenes where someone gets thrown off of a roof and lands on top of a car.
I have a feeling we'll see that a few more times before the end of the month. Next week, we're talking Neon Maniacs. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with those bikers on Book of Boba Fett, does it?
No. This is way before Book of Boba Fett from 1986.
I would
1986. 1986. So prepare yourself, sir. Yeah. And then we've got, Maniac Cop. And then we've got the Oily Maniac. And 2000 Maniacs is how we're ending this month, which I can't wait to talk about that film.
Am I old enough to watch the Oily Maniac? Because that sounds a bit...
Yes. No, it's not. It's not. No, the Oily Maniac. It's a foreign film. I didn't even realize it existed, but when I found it, I'm like, I got to watch it when I saw the synopsis. So prepare yourselves for Maniac March, folks. We only have so many weeks in the month. Yes, there is Invisible Maniac Cop. If there isn't a film like that, someone should make it, because I'd watch it. So, yeah,
I can't see it. Sorry.
And on that note, folks, we will say goodnight. Thank you to all our chatters out there. Thank you to all our listeners who are sticking with us through all of this thick and thin. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. And yes, to all the people who may have been here from TikTok, for information that only probably is interesting to me, I somehow have picked up 1,000 followers on TikTok.
Whoa!
So I no clue why they want to watch an old man talk about films, but I only talk about them for a minute. So maybe that's why, unlike this show, which is already going long. So thank you, folks. And I would just say a good night, everyone.